There was a time where I was studying for an exam, and he stood up, and he picked up his laptop charger, and I thought he was going to go and plug it in. And then he put it around my neck and tugged on it. And then when I said to him, "What the hell are you doing? Like, what's up?" He then was like, "Oh, I was just trying to see how you'd react if I actually did that." Years later, then tell my sister that this is what happened, and then she was like, "Tatenda, that was not okay."
For anyone who doesn't know, male or female, who has ever at any point experienced any form of strangulation, you don't got to black out, but there's a 600% more of a chance that the person who did that to you will kill you.
The best way that I can describe it was that his face changed. The night where the first incident happened, it was one of the most surprising things in my life. We were, at that time, we were interns at the same company, and we were doing very well in that kind of thing. He picks me up, we get into the car, and his face looked like it was not the same person that I had seen that morning. It was a face I could not recognize. His face just, he went from being this very soft, sweet, almost angelic looking person to just being someone who had so much contempt towards me. It became a periodic thing where he would have these intense mood swings, these pathological forms of aggression that came from nowhere, and the looks of contempt. And it was this up and down thing that was then followed with him being really sweet to me and acting like nothing happened.
What's up, beautiful people? It's your favorite light, MB. Welcome to another episode of the Confidence Way podcast, where we are shining light on the darkness that is domestic violence and abuse. You already know we got 3 goals: educate, empower, and encourage. We are here to educate anyone who does not understand abuse, why people stay, why people won't leave, or perhaps they've been abused and they just don't even realize it. We're here to empower all of our survivors. Stand up, share your story without shame, fear, guilt, or judgment, because you are strong, you are powerful, and your voice deserves to be heard. And we are here to encourage anyone who is currently suffering in silence. Listen, you are not alone. You are not crazy. Abuse is not normal. Your feelings are valid. And despite how it may look and feel in this present moment, there's always a way out. And there are so many resources for support. Now let's go and get in this thing, because we about to rise above these insecurities, release the burdens of shame and guilt, and revive our God-given power, purpose, and passion the confidence way. So we about to light it up. Y'all, you are in for an entire treat. On today's episode, we have the amazing, the beautiful, the gorgeous, the poet, the writer, the author, the all things lyricist, Tatenda. How are you doing, sis?
I'm doing very, very well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. And thank you so much for inviting me on here. Honestly, I'm really looking forward to talking to you and to your audience as well.
I'm excited. I love it. They know what the deal is. Y'all, we got to buckle up, because we don't know if we're going right, left, bumpy, slide. So hang in there. We going to make it through. My first question for you is, I want to know who Tatenda was before she stepped into an abusive relationship.
Um, so how I was beforehand, I would definitely say prior to the experience, I was known to be very, very bubbly. I was known to be a very outgoing and lovey-dovey person. I was kind of like the out there kind of person, not even in too much of an intense way, but I was just the social butterfly. I was studying international law at the time, and I was actually prior to that, I had been president to what's it called? I was president of my law association at that time, so I was also very ambitious, very motivated. I had a very strong career ambition that I had for myself, and so I very much was a forward-thinking person. I was very out there, very bubbly, very social. Had a lot of friends, and I don't want to say that I was like super popular, but a lot of people knew me, so I was out there.
And you said the experience. So was it only one instance that you ever experienced abuse or an abusive relationship?
Yeah, no, that probably, yeah. I was 21 years old when that relationship started, and I could definitely say that it was. I'm not saying that I've had like perfect experiences with men, as most women probably haven't, but that was one relationship that I can definitely classify as abusive. Yes, it was my only one.
Okay. So you're this beautiful spirit. Your light is illuminating everywhere you go. People love your energy and your presence, which is why they're attracted to you, which is why you weren't necessarily popular, but well known. How did you meet Homeboy, and what was it that attracted you to him?
It's so funny to say this because I don't want to say this sounding vain or anything, but the one thing that really attracted me to him was it was he was one of the few men that I'd met that I guess could match me on a conversation level. I'm not saying that like that I'm this female Jordan Peterson or anything like that, but one thing that I did struggle with was finding a guy who could finding a guy who could match me on a conversation level, on an intellectual level. Like I'm not, I was studying and I'm friends with very, very intelligent men, of course. But at that time, I noticed that in conversations, I had to dumb myself down a little bit. I found that guys would not really be, I don't want to say able to keep up with me, but I found that I just wasn't able to meet my equal in terms of conversation and what it is that we had to the table. And with him, I found that. With him, I was able to have very easy conversations, and he was very, what's it called? And he was very able to kind of keep up with me. He was very, well informed about a lot of things. And he was also just a very easy person to talk to. It wasn't, I've noticed that sometimes when I have a conversation with a guy, they might try to like challenge me over even small things, or they might try to, in a way like bring me down. But with him, it felt like it was just so natural. Like it felt like we were friends. So that was what really attracted me to him.
When y'all met, did y'all meet like online or anything, or was it a personal meeting that had the conversation that sparked and you were like, okay, I can see myself kind of getting to know this guy?
So funny enough, we had actually met at a house party at like I think a couple of years before we met on Tinder. So we had met at a house party, had a basic conversation, but at that time we there was no interest there. We almost didn't actually realize we had met before until we matched on Tinder, had a couple of dates, and then I went to his house, well the student accommodation that he was in at the time, and I was like, this place looks really familiar, and he was like, really? And then like we kind of connected the dots and realized that, oh, the house party that they had here 2 years ago, we actually met. So we technically met first in person, but then we started like talking romantically on Tinder. Of which talking on Tinder didn't take too long. I think it was only like a week and a half of texting before we actually had our date.
So y'all meet up, y'all start sparking these conversations. How long was it that during the dating phase before y'all decided to say, okay, well, let's just make this official. Let's not be interested in dating any other people. I just want one-on-one time with you because I'm attracted to you. You're attracted to me. Let's see where this can go.
This it took about, honestly, I'd say about 2 months, 2.5 months, which is always something that kind of, it's one of the things that made me initially doubt that the relationship was unhealthy, because there was no love bombing. It wasn't like the typical love bombing that like a lot of people talk about, where they say that within a matter of days they were saying that they loved each other. It wasn't like that at all. It was actually a very slow start, a very smooth start. We spent a lot of time together, but nothing that was, only 2 or 3 times a week, nothing that was weird. And then after about, I think about 6 weeks in, we just had like a brief conversation about, okay, do you see this going somewhere? And then about 2 or 3 weeks after that, we then had he just, he told me that he loved me, and that's basically what started the relationship. So it was the, should I say in quotes, the regular timeline of what a healthy relationship would have been, like 2.5 months of consistently seeing one another, and then we were in a relationship.
Looking back on this now, prior to y'all getting into that relationship, outside of the love bombing, did you feel like you saw any red signs or any flags?
To be honest, the first red flag that I remember seeing personally was probably after we became boyfriend and girlfriend, because I really have searched my mind, and I guess I could say the only thing I didn't like was the fact that in the very, very, very beginning, he didn't seem to be making much effort. But I just put that down to, look, we just met on Tinder. He's probably talking, like, I didn't. Otherwise, no, no, no. Before we became boyfriend and girlfriend, it seemed very, very normal. Like it seemed so normal. Like there was nothing out of the ordinary, no love bombing, no signs of controlling, no signs of anything. It wasn't until actually a few months into the relationship that I picked up on something. But even then, it was a slow escalation before it became a huge roller coaster, but going up that hill before it became the downhill was slow enough. So I'd say it was about 8 months into the relationship where the first signs of emotional distress kind of came in.
What were those signs? What did that look like?
Mood swings that I could not. The best way that I can describe it was that his face changed. There was one night in particular, the night where the first incident happened. It's a night that I can never forget. Not even because I'm still attached to it, but it was one of the most surprising things in my life. We were at that time we were interns at the same company, and we were doing very well in that kind of thing. And we were on our way home. The plan was to go to the gym, and then because we had separate places at the time, so the plan was to go to the gym, and then we would meet up. Was to go home. We would get ready for the gym. He would pick me up, the whole nine. And he picks me up. We get into the car, and his face looked like it was not the same person that I had seen that morning. It was not, it was just, it was a face I could not recognize. His face just, he went from being this very soft, sweet, almost angelic looking person to just being someone who had so much contempt towards me. And he was driving really fast, which was actually the beginning of the many times where I was scared of him in the car. But he was driving really erratically, and he was snapping at me. And at some point he had headphones in, and I remember saying, like, can you please take the headphones out? Like, you're driving, I was in such a state of shock that I could not like I remember like even asking him, did anything happen? Did I do something? Like, we had had a fantastic day. Actually, it was one of the best days we had ever had. So to go from that, and then I get into his car to go to the gym together, and it's almost like I'm looking at my worst enemy. It's something that I even remember the date and time and everything and everything. And from there, um it became a periodic thing where he would have these intense mood swings, these pathological forms of aggression that came from nowhere, and the looks of contempt. And it was this up and down thing that was then followed with him being really sweet to me and acting like nothing happened. Like, almost like that night in particular, when I like the night that I described, the first night that I saw his face drop, or the mask drop, immediately after the gym and everything, the plan was for us to have dinner together. And we get back home, and he cooks for himself, doesn't even cook for me. And I ended up having to make my own plan for dinner. And then he just locks himself in the bedroom until like midnight. And then I finally make my way in there. And he's so lovey-dovey and sweet, and he's telling me that I'm the best thing that's ever happened to him. So yeah, that's why I say the rise was very slow and steady, and then it was just this abrupt fall into a cycle that I still can't explain.
Okay, so you just had a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and
Hmm.
was there at any point in time, once you retired to the bedroom and he's back to the mask, the facade is back up, was there any conversation about what had just transpired over those couple of hours?
I tried to have that conversation, and he just acted like nothing happened. The only thing that I recall, because it was such a come down that I fell asleep very quickly, actually. The only thing I recall was him saying, no, I just had a very bad day. But I couldn't understand what the bad day was, because we had lunch together that day. He was really happy. He actually was the one that was trying to convince us to go to the gym together, because he thought it would be a good way for us to spend time. So I didn't know what the bad day was caused by, but otherwise, no, it was very often actually in the relationship where when I tried to talk about a very bad incident, that he would either dismiss it or shut it down or stonewall or
And
make it about me.
I've seen too, since I've been doing more research on it, that so many times that the guy or the abuser is like, it's like they can switch it off. It's always a mind game. They can switch it off and make you
Hmm.
confused, like, what are you talking about? And then you're sitting over here like, I'm pretty sure this happened. No, nothing happened. I can't be crazy. Well, I'm not the crazy. And it's just like this back and forth. And now you're having these conversations in your head, which as you continue to stay in a relationship like this, you really start questioning your sanity. Wow. Just like that. Just like that.
Just like that, like a face change, like and even in moments where he'd be very kind and sweet and loving, I could not recognize the angel that I once knew, you know. And again, there was no love bombing. There was no, I mean, maybe in a way, the one thing I did pick up on was his insistence on taking out my schedule a little bit, but I took that as though he's just being a man who's pursuing me. I didn't see that as love bombing because there was no grand gestures. There was no telling me he loved me very quickly. There was no I want to marry you within that kind of thing. So going on to the point of what you were saying about how questioning my sanity, I've really questioned whether or not it even was abusive because it didn't seem to follow the typical beginning cycle of abuse, you know? So, yeah.
Y'all have that interaction. You go to sleep. You wake up the next day. What is the day after?
Same sweet person, getting me lunch and going on walks during the lunch break and the whole nine. It's almost like nothing happened. And something that I forgot to mention was when I then went into bed and he was acting like nothing was happening. He held me really tightly and he was like, "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I'm so lucky to have you." And you can just imagine going from being yelled at while he was driving at full speed in a car to being told I'm the best thing ever. It was a mental mind F, honestly. It was a I can laugh about it now because it's been a few years, but at that time, I think I still have a voice note that I sent to my best friend when I woke up early that morning and sent her a voice note, and I was like, "Can you please explain to me what on earth just happened?" She didn't have words for it. She just was like, she was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, understandably. And she was like, "Oh, maybe he just needed some space. Maybe he had a bad day." Like, she also couldn't understand. So, but the next day, very normal, very, very normal. Next incident didn't happen until a few weeks after that. And then over time, they would get closer in occurrence. So it would be one terrible thing would happen, and then a couple of weeks of respite, or 3 to 4 weeks of respite. And then it went from that to like every other day where I just didn't know what to expect from him.
How long were y'all in a relationship?
Officially 2.5 years, and then in contact 3 years. So 2.5 years is how long we were together. But it took a further 6 months before I was able to just say, "Okay, no more contact. Like I can't talk to you. I'm done." That kind of thing.
Why did it take 2.5 years of constant back and forth volleyball of emotions and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde for you to say, you know what, this ain't that. I can't do it. 2.5 years.
Yeah. I think, like most victims of abuse, it was very much an attachment thing. I was really attached to him at that point, because when it was good, it was absolutely brilliant, and it was almost like, in his words, we were the same person. And there was also the subconscious fear, I guess, of me not being able to get him off my back. And the reason I say this is because I have a memory of opening up to a male friend of mine finally, like, probably 2 years into the relationship, saying, "Okay, you know what, I think something is wrong. This isn't just typical relationship problems. I think I'm actually being abused here." And my friend, in a very, very nice way, was, "Okay, but why don't you walk away? Why don't you, why not take a break?" And I remember saying, "I don't think he will let me do that." Like, and then he was like, "No, like, if he shows up to your house, just don't open the door." And I'm like, "No, I don't think you understand. He might not leave if I don't open the door." So that's why I'm saying I think there was also the subconscious fear of me thinking that I wouldn't be able to break free, because he was one person who was very difficult to let go of, very he always had to have the last word, and the narrative of most conversations and most situations had to be done by him and controlled by him. So in a way, I remember I would envision scenarios where I would be walking down the street and he would see me and stop his car and put me to task. Like, I really I knew that it had to end with his last word, but his last word wasn't going to be letting me go unless he wanted to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It makes perfect sense. And what we're not going to skip over is what you said in regards to it wasn't always bad, but in most cases, in most conversations that I had, in most posts or stories that I've heard, people say that in an abusive relationship,
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing that gets you hooked and stays. It's like, it's not always bad. But in your case, your words are, it was brilliant. And that's not just because
Mm-hmm.
you're a writer and a poet. That's because you are someone who's able to actually mentally keep up with your stamina. And as a woman who's
Yeah.
educated, who's Black, who's doing her own thing, that's not always easy to find.
No,
So
not at all.
did you feel did you feel like, because that was such a powerful, because conversation, like if you're above the frivolous things, conversation is key. Like, it's the blood of the
Yeah.
relationship. And so did you find yourself feeling like, any point before the 2.5 years was up, I want to walk away? And even with the threat of him, of you believing that he wouldn't let you just walk away, was there a part of you that was kind of like, but I don't want to let this go, this brilliance
Yeah.
that was there?
Yeah, yeah, to an extent, because we, in a way, we had built like our own little bubble. Because the one thing that, I think I also kind of felt guilt over was, obviously I didn't know this in the beginning, but as I got to know him, he communicated very, like, in his moments of clarity, I guess, or moments of not being, so awful to me, he would communicate both directly and indirectly that he also felt the same way about me, that it was very difficult for him to find somebody to, match up on his level and all that stuff. And, I seemed to be one of the few people that, again, this is something I learned as the relationship went on. I seemed to be one of the few people that understood him as well. And so there was also this thing where it almost felt like we really understood one another, in a way that other people didn't. And, as I said, when the brilliant times, I'll give you an example. I will never forget when there was one time when he sat me down and he just gave me this entire dissertation talking about how he wants to get married in the future and have kids, and he doesn't want us to take too long to do it, and he sees me as the mother of his children, and he's been thinking about it. And it was it was such a well thought out conversation that I remember texting my mom and texting my friends and saying, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe what just happened." One of my friends was like, "That was an indirect proposal," like, that kind of thing. And then, in the most heartbreaking way, 2 months later, I remember bringing up that conversation again, right? In the most excited way. And this man looked me in the eye and said, "I think you're more serious about marriage and kids than I am, because I don't remember the conversation that way." And I remember like actually like reciting to him things he said to me. And he was like, "Yeah, but I think you misunderstood what I meant. I think you're just more serious about this than I am." And I just, so you can just imagine, then I was also set on this cycle where I was constantly trying to chase back who he was. So part of what kept me there was also trying to bring back, again, the angel that I knew. And so, yeah, the part of what also kept me there was me thinking that no, but we can fix this and it can get better. And there was also a part of me, I don't like to leave things unturned. Like, by the time I'm walking away from something, it's because I've left no stone unturned. I've even created stones to unturn just for the sake of it. And so I also was like, I don't want to just walk away. Like, what if he gets better? What if this is just what comes with the relationship? That kind of thing.
Boy, that hope is something serious.
Mm-hmm.
It's so serious.
Big
So,
time.
and you can, guys, you can understand, like, when you find something that's so rare, you almost, when you're not fully secure in yourself, you almost tend to allow, like, I can put up with this. I think I can put up with this. And
Mm-hmm.
just keep allowing those things to happen. And that line that you may have had or didn't have at the beginning, it keeps getting moved back and further back and further back. And they see that. The person
Yeah.
that is dealing with you, that's handling you, that's manipulating you, they see that and they take those steps closer and closer to push it further back, because they're like, oh, I'm getting her. Oh, I got him. I might as well see how far we can ride this ride. And it's
Mm-hmm.
really, really tough. It's really tough to let something rare go. But I think our mind is so focused on, like you said, the idea of what
Mm-hmm.
could be if we just work through this together, I'm here to support you, babe. We can work through this together. If you would just let me,
Exactly.
help you.
Yep.
Was there
Yep.
ever a time that he opened up about anything in his past, maybe any kind of trauma or anything that he had experienced or didn't like growing up or in other relationships?
Yeah, I knew a little bit about what happened to him growing up. Certain things I figured out. Certain things I figured out as I got to just know him and observe the dynamic of of his side. But one of the things that he opened up to me about was, having one parent who was like really angry and who was not very supportive. And I kind of put the pieces together and realized that he was also kind of he was very well provided for, and I don't say that as an understatement. He was very, very well provided for in terms of his, his physical needs and the house, they like very well provided for. But in terms of like the emotional side, it was almost non-existent. There was a lot of coldness that he experienced from one parent. And it was difficult initially for me to understand and realize it because of how warm they were to me. So when he began to open up to me a little bit, I was like, oh, okay, I mean, I was of course very supportive, very, very supportive. But I, I just remember, I do know that there was a lot of emotional neglect that he experienced, a lot of emotional neglect. Also growing up being misunderstood, and I can't say this to be true, so I'm not going to say that this is true, but just in terms of the pattern I picked up on, and based on certain things he said, I would not be surprised if he experienced a bit of violence in his life as well, from that parent. So, but he never explicitly said that that was the case. I just kind of, because I grew up with, a violent father, so I was kind of able to, kind of connect the dots a little bit. So and also the one thing he did open up to me about was the death of a grandparent that really meant a lot to him. And I know that that was something that really affected him too. So there was some trauma in his child. We actually, again, one of the things that I don't want to say bonded over, but one of the things that we both kind of came to see very quickly was just how similar our upbringings were in terms of the emotional instability, the emotional violence we experienced, and all those things. So yeah, his upbringing was a little similar to mine, except his had a bit more financial privilege. Not that I was poor in any means. My parents were, very the typical upper middle class educated people, but he was like two steps above that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It does. It does. So before we move on with that conversation, I want to shift just a little bit because you said that you grew up in a household with where your father was, when you say violent, like how would you describe that? What did that look like growing up as a child? Were you the only child? What was the dynamic?
So the best way that I can describe my father's violence was that it was very pathological. It was this like impulsive aggression that usually was not proportionate to the issue at hand or to the thing that would have triggered him. And the person that was on the receiving end of that was my mother. And I don't say that to disrespect either of my parents. My mother is very okay with me opening up about these things. And I don't say that to say, throw my father under the bus, but that was just the reality. It's funny how my first everyone most some people remember their first ever memories, like their first ever, I guess, entry into consciousness, right? My first ever memory, the earliest memory I have, is waking up to the sound of my mother being beaten. You get what I'm saying? So the that you can imagine what that was like for me as a child. And then around the age of 8 years old, that kind of went away. He started going to church, he stopped drinking. The violence, from what I was told, never really stopped, but it just kind of it reduced in severity. And I do think that there was also like a spiritual link in there because of the fact that he was going to church. And I'm not saying that people in church are not abusive. There's a lot of abusive people in church, but I grew up witnessing a lot of emotional violence on his end. He would put people to task over the smallest of things. Like, I'm talking, I remember we had a gardener who he assumed stole $3 from him, and he threw him in the back of a car and took him to the police station. It turns out that the $3 wasn't even stolen. You get what I'm saying? So he would put people to task over everything. The road rage was intense. The he was an interrogator, so he would interrogate you for hours, hours upon hours of interrogation over I remember like there was a so I'm not the only child. I have a younger brother and a younger sister, but then I also have an aunt who was only like a few years older than me, so she was always like a big sister who lived with us. And I remember she had a boy at the house, and my parents knew that this boy was coming. This wasn't like and my father put her to task for 3 hours because she didn't like how the boy was sitting. So she was sitting on a chair and he was facing her, but he was a little too close to her. And she had received this 3 hour lecture of respect and dignity and all, and not even coming from a place of love, but almost like he would beat you down in an argument, and you could you could tell him 2 plus 2 is 4, and if he wants 2 plus 2 to equal 5, he will beat you down verbally until it's 5, until you just say, okay, fine, 2 plus 2 is 5. And I'd say my mother was on the receiving end of a lot of the physical violence as well. He was never violent with his children, but emotionally he was. Yeah, he could be.
Do you think that any part of that childhood growing up with your father in those states had any impact on why you stayed as long as you did with homeboy?
Oh yeah, big time. Oh, 100%, 100%. Because, I have my mother's spirit. My mother is one person she loves to heal people. She loves to help people. She dedicates her life to people. So we actually have to we frequently as siblings have to sit her down and be like, you're doing too much, you know? So I think definitely. I think it was the classic stereotypical case of childhood mirroring adult relationships. Stereotypical. Only difference being that I wasn't as young as my mother was. My mother was 16 actually when she met my father, and he was 22 going on 23. No, he was 23. Wait. Was he 22 or had he turned 23? Well, he was between 22 and 23. So there was also a bit of grooming in there as well. But the only difference is that I wasn't as young as my mom. And because my mom had been through it, she then saw the signs that I was going through it. So there was that like guardian angel of her saying, okay, look, I can tell that something is up. I recognize this, that kind of thing. But otherwise, yeah, definitely my childhood impacted my choice big time.
You mentioned, so let's get back to homeboy, because
Hmm.
I wanted to bring that up for y'all listening who don't really understand that certain things are considered abusive. And I'm saying
Hmm.
that because of this question that I'm about to ask. You had
Yeah.
said that he wasn't necessarily physically violent, but you're saying that he was abusive. So for the people who don't understand that abuse is not a weighted word, and that it I want you to clarify what was abusive about the relationship, because some people would say, well, there was no abuse there. He just was acting weird one day and then he would get back to normal. Where's the abuse in that?
I would say it showed up in many ways. The first one was the sense of superiority that he had over me. Every chance that he could get to make me feel dumb or stupid, he took it. And to the point where even if I tried to stand up for myself or to kind of argue back or to, correct him, it would only be met with further treatment of that nature. I remember even and that ties into how hypercritical he was of me. When I say hypercritical, I mean I was criticized over everything that he could lay his finger on. I will never forget this one time I was called dumb, all because I was following the instructions on an oatmeal. Like I didn't really make oatmeal that much, and there was a particular oatmeal that I just never made before. So I was just looking at the box and just following the ingredients. And I remember he came into the kitchen. He was like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just making oatmeal." And he was like, "And why are you doing it that way?" And I said, because I'm just following the box." And he was like, "You're so dumb. Who needs to follow instructions for oatmeal?" And I was like, I don't know, someone who doesn't make oatmeal often, like, everything from being compared to other women, being blamed for some of his choices. If I were to think of one of the things that really, really, really hurt me was there was a lot of exclusion from important decisions that affected both of us. Like there was a conversation that we had had about moving in together in preparation to get engaged and get married and all that stuff. Um, And then out of the blue, he just changed his mind and said that wasn't happening. And then he gave me this excuse of, oh, logistics and finances or whatever, only for me to then find out that he was starting the process of buying a house behind my back. So things like that, where I was made to feel really superior, where I was on the receiving end of criticisms that to this day I still sometimes hear his voice in my head. I was excluded a lot from major decisions. I remember there was a time when what's it called? I remember there was a time, and this is something that I've only recently started opening up about, where it was a situation where I never even needed to snoop through his phone. We were just sitting next to each other and a message pops up from a woman, right? And I immediately say, "Who's that?" Because when your feminine instinct is talking to you and you're like, "That's just not a friend." Like, what is that? And I asked him, and I remember, and it basically became revealed to me that this was a woman that he had been previously sexually involved with, like before me. And, and I remember being very expressive about, like, I don't care what the nature of the conversation is. This really hurts me to know that you're talking to people that you used to sleep with. And he said, maybe but why don't you use this as an opportunity to prove yourself? Because if you were proving yourself as a girlfriend, I wouldn't have to do this, things like that. And there
Wait.
were,
Oh, nope, nope. We got to pause that, sis. No,
yeah,
ma'am. Hold
yeah.
up.
And
Wait a
mind
second.
you, yep,
Okay. Because first of all, y'all need to breathe through this. Let's unpack this.
yeah.
You're on the sofa. Is this like a what? Give me the sense of the atmosphere, the energy. Are y'all kind of in a chill mode right now? There hasn't been any kind of friction, or was
It was chill mode. It was actually 3 weeks after I had taken him back. This was after I think my first or second attempt at break. This was after my first attempt at breaking up with him, of which he had fought hard to come to get me back. And we were, what's it called? And we were just sitting on the couch. We were chilling. I guess my instinct was telling me something was up because, a few minutes before it happened, like, I'm very instinctual. I think it comes from the fact that I pray a lot. I'm very, very instinctual. I can feel things before they happen. And so a few minutes before it happened, I just felt very uneasy. And he was very happy, very calm. And he was just like using his phone, and we were watching this, like, it wasn't TikTok at the time. What was it? This was it wasn't it was this website. I can't
fine?
remember which one it was. It was one of these ones. And we were just looking, and a message pops up. And then I'm someone who just never asks, like, who are you talking to? I just never felt that, like, in any relationship, I've just never been like that. But with him, I just was like, who's that? And then he started to fidget and stammer a little bit. And I took his phone, something I've never done before. I took his phone and opened it. And he just was shaking and whatever. And I was like, who is this? Right. And then he was like, should I delete her? And I was like, wait, that's not what I asked you. I said, who is this? And then that's when the conversation started. And he was initially trying to make it seem like she was just a girl he knew from school. And then I said, nah, this doesn't add up. Like, what's up? Only for me to realize that she was a girl that he was involved with before me. Not in a relationship sense, but they were sexually involved with one another a few times. Um, and then I remember asking him, like, how long have you been talking? What are the nature of the conversation? And I made him open up the messages and all that. And while they were just friendly, I knew in that moment that if I had even pulled a stunt like this, he would have had a huge issue with me. And the thing is, I was never able to argue with him. I was never, this is going to sound weird. I never had the privilege of being able to argue with him the way that other couples can argue and get, because the arguments turned into interrogations, which turned into me having to apologize. So I could never argue with him. I just had to calmly say, look, I don't like this. And then it came up 2 days later. And that's when I said, look, it really hurt me to know that you're talking to somebody that you used to sleep with shortly after I take you back. And that's when he made that line. Mind you, I'm the one that had broken up with him because he was trying to buy a house behind my back. But yet, in his eyes, I'm the one that had to prove myself. That's why I would say it was abuse. There was a couple of times where things became physical, and there were like 2 or 3 times where he did threaten me, but just because it wasn't physical, it was definitely still abusive because of the impact it had on me and my health. It was awful.
Okay. So you find out he's buying a house behind your back. You say, that's it. This is not going to work for me.
Yep.
And so
He
he
broke
spent
up with
the
him.
next 3 weeks trying to prove himself to you in reality that this can work. He's apologetic. Is he apologetic, or is he just kind of pulling you, trying to pull you back?
Apologetic, and then trying to explain himself. And initially he was very apologetic, then he was trying to explain himself, and then at some point he was like, oh come on, like, are you still, he was one person who could never sit in the discomfort of the things that he caused. So if he hurt someone's feelings and that person was trying to recover, you had to recover in his time frame. You could not recover in a time frame where it had to be in his time frame, otherwise it would just cause a trouble and you would end up being the one to apologize. So yeah.
Y'all, that's how it goes. that's
Yep.
that's how it goes. They give themselves all the space and time to heal from your response to their foolishness. But then when they've done something to you that has truly affected you, and you need the space to breathe, to heal, to figure out what just happened and regroup to make the next step forward, however that's going to look for you, they're very pushy. They're
Mm-hmm.
very demanding that, like, for instance, one thing that happened to me was like, oh, that's just the devil.
Oh God.
That's just the devil trying to break us up.
It's like they speak from the same script. In my
I
case,
am telling
because
you,
he wasn't very religious, he blamed it on attachment styles.
y'all, I have said this so many times on so many episodes. It's the same, it's this, like you said, the same script. It's the same character. They're just in a different mask and they're wearing different clothes and they live in a different region of the world, of the states,
Exactly.
whatever. It's bananas how eerily similar these situations are, whether it's mental, emotional abuse, financial abuse, which that could almost be considered financial abuse. You're saying we're going to do one thing and then you go behind my back to get your name on a house. Like, what were your plans in this? What were you thinking, to have something to hold over me or something? Or whether it's physical abuse, they have this thing where it's like the same cadence, it's the same song, and they know how to just lull the relationship back into, well, I know he or she is going to click into survival mode eventually. So once I can get them back into survival mode, I can keep on with the foolishness.
Exactly. I always say that they have the same ancestors. It doesn't matter if they're not the same race, they have the same ancestors, man. It's insane.
It really is. It really is. So the audacity to say what he said.
Yeah.
That's, and you know what I'm learning and what I'm seeing in my growth, and this is for anyone who's currently in a relationship that doesn't have to be physically abusive, but you just don't feel like it feels unhealthy. There are things that look unhealthy. Follow that feeling, follow that instinct, because like we're saying, it the signs are there. It's just whether or not we're gonna see them and acknowledge them and then act accordingly, or if we're gonna blow them off. When someone says something like that, all I'm seeing is a projection of their own insecurities on the person that they're talking at in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And for that to happen, like 2 3 weeks after you just left him, and he had to do the groveling, so to speak, to even say, hey, this will work, for him to say, if you would just do this, I wouldn't have to be doing this. If you would better prove yourself, that's bananas. But that's what
Yeah.
it is. So if you're in a situation right now and you feel like you're being berated, you feel like you're being talked down to, you feel like you're being talked to like you're a child, like you don't deserve respect, or flat out being told you don't deserve respect, there's something in that person who's speaking to you. They're projecting that onto you, and that is not your burden to bear.
Amen. I fully agree. I thank you so much for saying that, because I blamed myself for such a long time. So, no, I fully agree with that. Thank you.
It's sad that the person who's being abused carries more weight of the pressure mentally and emotionally in the relationship. But it's not surprising because it's usually the person who's being abused is someone who's empathetic and someone who is constantly on the, I just want to help people. And I can see the potential in you if you would just let me help you.
Mm.
They take advantage of it every time in any kind of
Mm.
situation. This conversation is good though, because we're not talking. I mean, you said there were some times, like what were the times when you're saying that there was a little bit of physical abuse? What was that?
So it ranges from him like trying to assert like physical dominance of an area, like things like, hitting his hands against the table, or like kind of taking up space where he didn't have to take up space, or like if there's like a lot of couples that are happy together, they roughhouse, they play, but like, not once does a man slap his woman in the face while roughhousing, but that happened to me. There was another time where, I will say, trigger warning for those that are listening, because it's funny. It's only when I told my sister this that she looked at me and she said, "You do realize that was messed up, right?" So I will say, trigger warning, potential physical assault. Um, there was a time where I was studying for an exam, and he stood up, and he picked up his laptop charger, and I thought he was going to go and plug it in. And then he put it around my neck and tugged on it. And then when I said to him, "What the hell are you doing? Like, what's up?" He then was like, "Oh, I was just trying to see how you'd react if I actually did that." you know Only for me to actually like years later then tell my sister that this is what happened, and then she was like, Tatenda, that was not okay. And then, funnily enough, I came across an article that talked about how strangulation is actually a huge sign that someone might, as much as I hate to say, that someone might kill you. So and I'm only laughing because sometimes it's just a natural reaction I have now. I used to cry when I talked about it. Now I laugh about it, and I can say that that's probably God who's healed me, that I'm able to laugh about it. But yeah, things like that. And then there were a couple of times where there was one time where he said that if I were to, now I can't remember if he said if I were to ever cheat on him, or if I were to ever move on to some. I think it was if I were to move on with someone else, that he would give me the beating of a lifetime, and that he wouldn't know who to give the beating to first, me or the new guy. But I can't remember if the context was me cheating on him or me moving on. I never cheated on him, but I can't remember what that context was. But so there were threats, and I had seen, like, he was a punisher. Like, he tried to fix people. I remember, like, his without giving away too much detail, his family were into property development and real estate. And there was one person who supposedly, apparently, now that I think about it, I can't even believe it, but supposedly swindled his father out of $300. Like, not even, I mean, I know $300 is a lot, but $300 is not 3,000. It's not 30K. And he said to me, "Yeah, even though it's been 10 years, if I were to see that guy on the street, I'd beat the shit out of him, and I'd be the sorry to curse." And I was like, I mean, firstly, isn't that your dad's job? And secondly, like, or like, I remember there was a time where someone parked their bicycle not even directly in front of his gate, but like enough on his gate that, like, okay, it was a bit of a nuisance to get out and move it, but he then moved it onto a different street so the person couldn't find their bike when they got back. And I'm like, you could have moved it 6 feet. You could have just moved it 6 feet to the side. I mean, I know it's not easy, but come on, it's not like this person locked it to the gate. So he was a fixer in that sense. So there was always the walking on eggshells, because I never knew how he would respond to me physically.
That's real bananas right there. Real crazy.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I went back to that. And I'm glad that you said what you said, because yes, and I read this recently too, in my pursuit of understanding and just diving into things. For anyone who doesn't know, male or female, who has ever at any point experienced any form of strangulation, you don't have to go black. You don't got to black out, but it's a 600% more of a chance that the person who did that to you will kill you.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that high. Wow.
So the thing is that people who are killed by gunshot or homicide, they found that somewhere between 43 and 48% of those victims had previously been strangled. And so in the hopes of hey, well, we need to start advocating or be proactive in let's not have guns out here, or let's not do these things. Research and all the studies that have gone, and people who are on the national organizations and programs of these things are saying it's not the gun, it's the preface of them strangling you.
Oh my.
Whether it's like pretending to rap to who does that? Who
Yeah.
thinks in their mind, in their sane mind, I just want to see what your response is going to be. And I wanted to stay right here for a minute because there are people out there who don't believe that they can consider that abuse because, one, it wasn't it wasn't full on strangulation. It was just set it there, pull, maybe a little tug, and it's still intimidation. It's still technically physically abusive. And like you said, even in a play tussle, nobody's flat out smacking anybody without the intent or the trait within them to do that full on.
Yeah, when you frame it like that, it's actually insane that like if they can picture it, they can probably do it. That's insane. Thank you for saying that, honestly. Thank you.
What I've learned is because I've had somebody reach out to me since I started opening up myself. I had somebody reach out to me questioning whether or not she was in an abusive relationship. And she's like, well, I've never been hit, I've been pushed up against the wall. He's put his hand around my neck. And we have, for some reason, I don't know if it's because of society, I don't know if it's because of all the movies that we watch, we've convinced ourselves that that's not physical abuse because I'm not coming out with a black eye. I don't have any broken bones. I don't have any scratches. I can't just go up there and say, hey, police officer, he did this. Here's the proof. Because there's no proof except for what you experienced in that moment. But I need y'all who are listening to understand that if you're experiencing anything of that nature, that is physical abuse. That is a sign that it's not going to get better. That's
Yeah.
the beginning.
Yeah. That's true.
That's
That's so
another
true.
part. It is. And what happens is, like I was saying earlier about them pushing those boundaries, I had this conversation with homeboy one time when he was like, at this point in the relationship, I was tapped out. I was at a place where you I almost just didn't care anymore because I was going numb. I was slipping into depression and I was just functioning. Basically, what
Yeah.
ends up happening the longer you stay, you just turn into survival mode. And he had said to me, he was like, well, at least, we're getting better. This is another thing that they do. They make their mistakes, you're a part of their mistakes. So it's
Yeah.
a we thing. So he's like, we're getting better. It's not like
Mm.
it's not as bad as it used to be. And I said, well, just because it's different doesn't mean it's better.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
And they're going to say stuff to you to minimize the 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 weight of what just happened to you. Because, oh, well, I just put my hand on your throat. It was nothing.
Hmm.
Whether they're intending to do it, if they haven't done it before, in their subconscious mind, that's a sign that I can move that boundary back.
Mm.
That's a sign that the next time I can see what I can do, even if they're not necessarily thinking this step through, I can see. I put my hand on her face. We were just playing in the moment, but she didn't say anything to me. So when we're not playing in the moment, that's a sign that I'm probably going to get away with this and she's still going to be here tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. You're dropping gems. I'm sitting here thinking, wow.
That was real, sis. That was real what you went through.
Yeah.
And
Very real. Yeah.
just like you, I was thoroughly surprised at the correlation between not even being blacked out, but just somebody putting their hand on your throat or anything around your throat to that escalating to death.
Yeah.
I would
I was shocked
never,
too.
never guess that.
Yeah. I was shocked too, honestly. I really was. I think I had seen a post. I mean, the statistics you gave and the context you gave was even deeper than what I read. I had just seen a couple of Instagram posts, just talking about how I think it was someone who said like, yeah, if he can put his hands around your neck outside of a consensual sexual context, this is someone who actually wants to stop you from breathing. And then most of my education just came from the comment section of women saying, yeah, like I knew it was done for. Some people were talking about how their mothers were killed because of, that kind of thing. So it's you it also, even just like, remember how I said at the beginning that it took me so long to even accept the fact that this was abuse? And even just telling my sister, it's not until I told her that she just looks at me and said, Tatenda, what the hell? Like, what did he do? And even talking to you now, despite the fact that it's what's in 2021, like 3 years have, over 3 years have passed now, almost 3 years have passed now. And sometimes I still say, okay, so it was actually, so I wasn't making the, also the abuse wasn't equal. Like, and even just listening to you talk now, like I have no intentions of talking to this person, but I even feel for his new partner, and I feel for, what she might be going through as well. I know for a fact, that she, similar to the position I was in, she probably looks down on me the way that I looks down on his exes, because he was very, like, he was a master communicator and making people seem like they were worse than they actually were. And I'm sure that she probably looks down on me and says, "Oh, she just didn't get him," or whatever. But I can only imagine, like, the depth of manipulation and abuse she's experiencing now, especially because of what it took for me to even break contact with him, for everything from police reports and lawyers. And I don't usually have faith with police, especially when it comes to these things, but I have to give it up to the police officer who took my case. He didn't even waste any time. If anything, he was pretty cold about it, which I really liked, because I could tell that he had done this before. He was very much like, yeah, boom, 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 boom. Yeah, we talked to him. He's going to leave you alone now. Go get a lawyer. Like, he was very, like, in that sense. So because of what it then, and I even had to then, like, send that information to his mom and say, I've gotten the police involved. I've gotten the lawyer involved. Like, if he doesn't leave me alone. So even just that, basically what I'm saying is, like, the gravity of what it took for me to leave him versus now what I picture the attempts that he's making to manipulate her. My heart breaks for her. Like, my heart, sometimes I can feel her, like my heart breaks for her. Like, it really does.
And I think that that is because you are healed. Because what I'm seeing, what I'm learning, and this is just my belief,
Hmm.
when I see someone who has been in an abusive relationship still have that desire to be with their homeboy or their homegirl, and they've ended up moving on to somebody else, if that person who was being abused initially hasn't started their healing journey or isn't so far on their healing journey, they're still envious of the other person. Or, well, what does she have that I didn't have? Or what does he have that I didn't have? Or why is he with her? Or why is she with him? As opposed to, like you said, because I completely feel what you're saying. It breaks your heart because, like, you
Yeah.
know what you endured, and you know that that's not going to be the cap until that person decides that, oh yeah, there is something wrong with me, I need to get some things healed and handle myself. That's just going to be a stepping stone to what's going to then be further in the next relationship or the next person that they go on to. So I'm with you. It's like you think about that and you just think, I wish that I could say something to you that would save you, but you can't.
Yeah. And even trying to have that conversation would just endanger you. Like,
Yeah.
I've never even tried to have that conversation at all. I did notice, and I could be wrong here, but I did notice, like, some stalking on my page at some point, and I thought, okay, is that her? Is it not? But then I noticed that I was blocked from her main page, and I was like, okay, I did the exact same thing with his exes, so I know that he's told them the same lies. But yeah, no, when I first found out that he had moved on, very quickly after I had cut contact, I was initially like, "Oh my God, like, what did I do? Maybe maybe she's not bringing that side of him out." Like, like, I really did compare myself. But then the more I've healed, the more I sometimes I just extend prayers her way. Like I think I only know her first name. I don't even remember what she looks like, but sometimes she comes up in my mind and I'm like, please, Lord, pray for her. And she has a very biblical name as well. And I'm like, please, like, can the spirit of the person she's named after please enter her? Like, yeah, my heart is broken for her, especially because if I'm not mistaken, she's a few years younger than me, and he was already 3 years older. So I can imagine that age gap too. Oh, yeah. May God bless her, honestly. Honestly, honestly.
Absolutely. Now, I want to touch on something that you just made mention of, and I don't want to skip past it because I believe that it's important for whoever is going to listen to this. That's
Mm-hmm.
similar situation. Number one, they are if at any point the person that you're in a relationship with in this moment and talks about their previous relationships and there was a problem with everybody but you, I mean everybody but them, that's
Mm-hmm.
a problem because
Mm.
they're not able to accept responsibility for any wrong that they have done to cause that relationship to end. Because let's be honest, even in a healthy relationship that just doesn't work out, mutual parties who are mature enough emotionally and mentally can say, I see what I did wrong here and could have been better at, and I see what you did wrong here and could have been better at, and vice versa. But when you have someone who is manipulative, controlling, who is the parasite, as I call them, looking for a new host, they're never going to say they're going to play the victim, even though they were the abuser.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to say that because there's somebody that's out there right now that's in a
Mm-hmm.
relationship doing exactly what you're saying his new host is doing, blocking the people. You said that, and I was like, yo, because homeboy over in Alabama was like,
Mm-hmm.
you need to block. His ex didn't have a social media page, but he told me to block her brother, and I didn't think anything of it
Mm-hmm.
seriously because it was constantly, she's doing this, she doesn't have a page, but I don't want him X, Y, and Z. And we went to school, like we didn't know each other, but we went to college together and we had a class together freshman year or something. So I knew who he was. I had never known anything about his sister. But when you
Mm-hmm.
said that, I needed to bring that back up because if someone is telling you you need to block their ex's page when their ex hasn't even contacted you or
Mm-hmm.
that they've contacted you, that could be a sign. I'm not going to say it is, but it could very well be a sign that you need to be on high alert with the person that you're dealing with. Because why are you
Mm-hmm.
telling me to block somebody who hasn't even communicated with me?
Exactly. 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 And it's probably because he's just trying to prevent that potential conversation from happening. At least that's my guess.
Mm-hmm.
That's my guess.
That's my guess too. So I just needed to put that out there for our listeners to make
Amen. Thank you.
that you are aware, because everything that's happening in this conversation can easily be can easily be left as just, you know, peripheral information, peripheral details, but they're really important if you can actually see the signs and know what to be looking for, which is what most of us didn't know what to look for.
Mm-hmm.
I would have
Yeah.
not thought that, to think, oh, that's controlling, that's odd for you to tell me to block your ex. I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah.
But you said that you had to get police report involved, you had to get it to the attorneys. Tell us about that. Is this like, had you already left and then you had to get the police involved? What was that like?
So prior to leaving, I actually had joined, I had secretly joined a domestic abuse group chat online that was under a very conspicuous name. So like it wouldn't have been obvious if he, because at that point I I have no proof of this, so I'm not stating this as fact, but it's just a belief. I have belief that he was now beginning to also like read my stuff and whatever. So I was part of a domestic abuse group chat, and I was given the advice to create a paper trail. And as much as this sucks, the advice was in the event that the worst happens, you don't want it to be a case where it's your word against his. You want it to be, I think the woman, her exact words were, you want it to be your words against paper, his word against paper. And so what I did was I initially contacted a domestic abuse shelter. Not that I needed to go there, but I contacted them and I got into writing that, oh, I'm concerned. I think I'm being abused, that kind of thing. Made sure I had that into writing, and then I had an appointment with one of the people there to make sure that there's a log, that yeah, my name was on this appointment list. And then what I did was I called because I was living in the Netherlands at the time. I called the Dutch police, and basically what they can do is if there's someone who's bothering you, or if you have a reason to think that somebody might be a threat to your safety, but they haven't done anything that is worthy of a crime, you can get what is known as an AOL, which is like an appointment on location, which is where the Dutch police take your case, they take your report of the abusive incidences, and they don't ask for everything. They just ask for things that so I had to tell them about the laptop charger around my neck. I had to tell them about like the major threats. Um, and so then I got what was known as an appointment on location, which basically means if my phone number calls the police, they don't even have to pick up. They come straight to the house. Um, and then after the relationship came to an end, there was a period of time where we did not talk for a really long time. And without getting into too much detail, only because it's something that I just don't like thinking about, I received a threat of a particular nature that I was like, oh, okay, so he's really trying to get back at me now for leaving him. So I had to contact the Dutch police again. At this point, I wasn't even living in the Netherlands, but I had to contact the Dutch police. I sent them the screenshots. I sent them I asked them to check my name in the list. And so in this case, because the Dutch police are very hesitant to arrest people without proof, I had just enough for them to give him what is known, I'm gonna translate to Dutch now, a stop conversation, which basically means like let's say homeboy is trying to talk to you or trying to get at you, and he just won't leave you alone. The police can go to his house and say, look, we've been made aware that there is frequent contact coming from you to her. We're requesting you now to leave her alone. And on top of that, I had contacted a lawyer. I did this thing where I purposely called a few, where I purposely called a few legal bodies. What do they call it? Like a few law firms, and
Mhm.
gave them my name so that if he, for whatever reason, tried to call against me, they couldn't. So, um, I then found one that was willing to take my case, and they sent him a cease letter. And all of this was me literally like going on Reddit and going on Instagram and like saying, what do I do in this situation? So this is advice that other survivors gave me, and I'm so, so grateful for them. So I had enough of a paper trail that I was even able to just then send to his mother and say, look, your son is not leaving me alone. And as much as I loved his mom, I had to do this. I was like, and I did this specifically because I wanted him to know that people knew, because I protected so much. And if there's one thing he hated, it was people knowing how he was. So I purposely messaged three of his friends, all of which obviously blocked me, but I don't care. I messaged them anyway with the proof. And then I messaged his mother and I said, this is what's been happening. And since then, I've not heard a single thing. And I know it's because should he take anything further with the amount of proof I have, that's his reputation done. And if there's one thing that he was really picky about, was how people saw him. He was obsessed with how people saw him. So I know that for a lot of people, even women in the Netherlands, the justice system does not work. But I truly believe that for whatever reason, I was favored in that moment. And that's not something that I take for granted at all. Too many women have died across the globe trying to get help. And the fact that I was able to actually get him away from me, it actually rekindled my relationship with God, in a way that I'd never had before. So my experience was just it was I was just very fortunate. I know that most women are not, but I happen to be fortunate.
And I think too, I agree that that's definitely favor, because a lot of the conversations that I've had, it's not, it ain't that. They aren't that willing to work. It's almost like it's not serious until a life is taken. And then it's like, oh
Yeah.
dang, they really were serious. It's like, what
Hmm.
if us filing threat? Like, why do you tell us to do this if it ain't serious?
Exactly.
We're no longer here. But I still agree with you. And I still agree, like, even if even if you don't go to the police, because it has been proven through studies and research that the most dangerous time for anyone in an abusive relationship is when they say, I'm leaving, and they actually start leaving.
Mm.
So, with that information, people don't understand why people stay. There are a lot of reasons why people stay, and that's often one of the biggest ones, because the abuse that you've endured up until that point, you already have an idea of the devil that you've been dealing with. You have no
Mm.
idea of the devil that's going to come out once you show your cards and you're like, I'm gone. And if
Yeah,
you don't
exactly.
have immediate support, like if you don't have everything lined up, ready to go, you're escalating your chances. And so I say that to say that even if you are afraid to reach out to the police at this moment, because you know that's going to bring attention on him and or her, and they're going to go to that person, and you're not ready for that because you're
Mm-hmm.
not able to leave just yet. If you can write it down, send screenshots, or put it up in something in the cloud and give somebody your password, document it yourself, so that
Mm-hmm.
it gets to a point that you are safe to start throwing that to the police's way. You have date and time stamped evidence of what you've been dealing with for however many months of years you've been dealing with it. And
Mm-hmm.
keep proof, take pictures, write it down, and then send it to somebody that you trust and let them know, hey, I can't move yet because of XYZ or whatever, but I need your support and I need you to hold on to all the information that I'm going to send you. And once you send it, if you can't, if you have the ability to have a secure folder on your phone, because a lot of people don't, a lot of people have to give up their passwords. A lot
Yeah.
of people have to let you have full access to their devices. Otherwise, that's a whole nother problem. If you have the ability to have a secret folder and your homeboy or homegirl ain't on your phone like that, keep it there. If you don't, send that junk off and delete it
Mm-hmm.
and just be done and say, hey, I really need you to hold this for me.
Yeah.
I got to keep this stacked up because when it's time for me to exit, I need to have this information. But keep a paper trail. I wish I would have done it. You know, I feel like I was favored and fortunate too. Both of us are fortunate because there's a lot of people that ain't here today. But you and
Mm-hmm.
I are able to have this conversation and we're able to shine light and we're able to share with others what people don't really know is abuse is abuse. But if you're not in that space, please keep a paper trail. Just
Yeah.
just keep it, document it, and keep it somewhere that you know for sure is safe. I mean, really know.
Very true.
So,
Mm. I agree with that.
man, sis. Okay. So that was because I was about to say, okay, Dutch police. I was about to give them their credits. And you was like, it don't always work like this. I was just favored. I said, darn, I thought we had somebody somewhere in the world.
Nah, I think for as long as a society is made for men by men, you really need favor to escape them as a woman. Honestly, honestly. Like it's such a shame. It's such a shame. But I will never forget. I'm not gonna say his full name, but Mr. Officer Raymond, my goodness, man. That man saved my life, honestly.
Officer Raymond, we thank you, sir. We appreciate
Exactly.
your duty to the badge. Man. Okay. So it was from what did you say, 2019 to 2021, right? 2.5 years.
Yes.
Okay. And then you went no contact, basically, once you left and you were able to file your reports and all of that like ceased, it stopped. What was the next phase of your journey? Like you're out, you're able to breathe again, you're able to tap into that bubbly, beautiful social butterfly of a spirit that you had prior to going into that darkness. How is life now? And how has your healing journey been from 2021 up until present?
Um, Overwhelmingly, obviously, it's been good because I'm free. I will say that healing is not linear. The best way that I can describe it is that I had to be raised from the dead. Um, I really had to be raised from the dead, and I can only be thankful to not just God, but to my mother and to my sister and my brother and my aunt and my friends were very understanding, because at some point I actually just stopped talking to everybody. Like I had isolated myself from everyone, family included. And so the forgiveness I got from it wasn't even like, I remember like trying to apologize to one of my friends, and she was like, "Oh, pish posh, like there's no apologies needed. I knew what you're going through." So the one thing I will say is that there are certain parts of me that have not come back yet, and not even because I'm still attached to him, but because certain, and my mother verbalized it very well. She was like, when a man handles you in a particular way, certain parts of you die, and don't be ashamed if they don't come back, because she said certain parts of you die when a man handles you in a particular way, and I fully agree with her. I noticed that my mood used to be consistently happy, like, but I still suffer from low moods that just come from nowhere. Like I won't even be thinking of anything, and then I just have a low mood. Something that I really am working my, like I'm very diligent about working on this. Unfortunately, my sister is very honest with me, so if I'm not in a good mood, she can tell. She's like, "Excuse me, what's up?" And so, um, I gained my weight back because I did lose a lot of weight. I was always like a bit of a curvy girl. Even when I was really slim, I always had curves. Like at my slimmest, I had curves, but like went from looking like I could have been on America's Next Top Model to, so I went from looking like I could have been not the plus size model, but I looked a bit like, uh, okay, so beyond, in that relationship, I went from, let's say I went from Beyonce and Bootylicious to looking like I could have been on America's Next Top Model. And I don't say that as a compliment. I say that that's just how much weight I lost. I was sharing clothes with my little sister, and she was always the thin one between the two of us. Um, and I've gained my weight back. I actually at some point gained so much weight that people were like, "Damn, you're like really thick now." And I was like, "I know." um, so I really, it's not I will say this though, the clarity of mind that I've gained has been unmatched. I didn't realize how bad my brain fog was being with that man until I left him. I have more clarity of mind than I did even before I got together with him. I'm a lot more certain about my future in a way that I even wasn't when I was before I was with him. I noticed that I'm much more careful with men, but in the words of my family, a little bit too careful now, because my mom is like, "You need to get out there. You need to start dating." And I'm like, "You have no idea how comfortable I am in this bubble, mom." um,
It's cozy.
yeah,
It's
it's
real
so
cozy.
cozy. It's so cozy. It's so comfortable. It's like anytime I see a post about, oh, people who are emotionally unavailable, I'm like, leave us alone. Okay, we've been through.
I done gave my emotions out. Okay, let me get them
Exactly.
back together.
Exactly. But I will say that, like, so it's not linear. I still have moments where I get flashbacks, but the overall thing has been the mental clarity, the moving on into my future. I went back home, moved in with my mom again, and at that point she had already left my dad. So we really, weirdly enough, about a year before about a year before that relationship started, my mother had also left my father, but she was really sick at the time. So by the time I left that relationship, we healed together in a way. Like the family really, like we all just, and it's not been easy. It's not been easy at all. It's like it's not been easy at all. There've been days where we've just been, it's not been easy, but we're so much better overall. I'm so much better. And I will say that literally in the last 3 to 4 days, my heart has started to open up a little bit. There's no one on my mind. There's no man I'm attracted to. But the last 3 to 4 days, I've been like, huh, you know what? I could do with the man to hold at nighttime. So I can feel I'm healing slowly but surely. And I'm just happy that I got my weight back. Like I'm so happy I got my weight back. Like I feel like my old self again. I'm juicy again. Like I'm really happy about that.
Yes, sis. Oh my goodness. People don't understand. Let these folks be hermit mode for a minute. Y'all can't rush healing. People don't.
Exactly.
I'm glad that you're taking your time though, because it's so often that people think that they've healed because they're able to breathe that fresh air again. And they're like, oh, they remember how good it was to be able to breathe and make their own decisions. And they think that they're ready to step into something and they ain't ready. And they're
Exactly.
attracting that energy that they just left, but it's just in a different form. So I am proud of you for taking your time to really see that you are still on your healing journey and to acknowledge that, hey, my heart is opening up. It's a constant becoming is always it's always an action verb. There's never an end unless you decide to end it to becoming the best version of yourself or to healing, because once you heal from that, there's always something else that you can acknowledge and recognize that you could be better at, or that you could from being or allowing in your space. So I'm very thankful that you were able to do that, and that you're really grounded and aware of where you are and what you're doing. My last
Thank you.
for you is this. Hey Jacob. Hey baby.
Oh, hello.
I've done so good. I've done so good at that not happening. But it's okay. It's life. My last question for you though is, what is confidence? Like, how would you define confidence, and how does it feel to you now?
Ooh, I know how to say it in my head. Let me find the best way to verbalize it. And maybe you can you're very good at simplifying the way I talk. So maybe you can even like simplify what I'm gonna say. I would say that confidence for me is, in the words of Nina Simone, no fear, freedom. And what I mean is like the confidence that you have in yourself to make the wrong decision and be okay. The confidence that you have in yourself to make the right decision and know that you can work for it. The confidence in knowing, and the freedom of being able to think for yourself and do without the an independence of thought for me is what confidence is, because a lot of people think that because they're shy that they're not confident. No, I'm like, no, you're just in a like, you're shy in a social situation, that doesn't mean you're not confident. You might be shy in a social situation, but if you have the confidence to take a particular step in life and do it with your chest, that's confidence. If you have the ability to make a decision and say, you know what, I remember I recently changed careers, and that was a hard thing for me to do, but I remember my mom like sat the other day, actually was like, I'm so proud of you that you just decided to do that. That's not an easy thing. Not a lot of people have the courage to move back home with their parents, that kind of thing. So just the independence of thought and being able to act on it. For me, that's what confidence is. And what about you, actually? I'd love to know, because you seem very confident yourself.
Oh man, thank you. So for me, it's funny that you asked me that, because I started the clothing brand last year, which I feel like God let me do it for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But then he was like, all right, listen, I let you play around, but this is your assignment, which is what we're doing now. This is your assignment. And he was coming at me. I think I mentioned that to you when I reached out to you. He was like, hey, I love that you like this, but this is not what you're supposed to be doing right now. But I
Mm-hmm.
started that brand all because I realized that I found myself in a domestic violence and abusive relationship because I was making decisions from a place of insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned, and I believe that God gave me that word, that when we navigate our life based off our insecurities, our past guilt, our shames, our regrets, our fears, we're directing and steering ourselves the wrong way. And so confidence to me is that we identify with who God created us to be,
Mm-hmm.
and we are confident in that space, like being who I was created to be, learning who I was created to be, and having the audacity to step out into the world each and every day, being that version of me in front of everybody else, regardless of their opinions, their beliefs, what they think. Because we live in a society where we're constantly trying to conform and look like somebody else's picture or look like somebody else's idea or what our parents say we should be, when God created us all equal but different. And if I'm confident, it means that I'm stepping out, like you said, with my chest out, my head held high, like this is me. This is what I have to present to the world. And I know that everybody has somebody, but I'm not for everybody. I'm for the people I'm for, and I'm going to show up and be just that, because that's who
Amen.
So that's me, girl. That's where I feel like, and I feel like confidence isn't, I say this. People say that certain people don't have confidence, which I don't agree with, but that's just my belief. I believe that everybody has confidence. It's just whether or not in the moment your confidence is operating at a low standard or a high standard. And if we can tap into the God given power, potential, and purpose that was put inside of us, we can operate at a high standard of confidence on a more consistent level.
Wow. I hope you have that written down somewhere. Like, can you write it down so I can repost it on my Instagram?
I'm a,
Say that one more time. Say that one more time, please.
I believe that everybody has confidence. It's
Mm-hmm.
whether or not we're operating at a low standard of confidence or a high standard of confidence.
Mm.
But when we tap into and align ourselves with God's power, plan, and purpose that He created us and how He created us to be in this space, we have a better opportunity to operate at a high standard of confidence more consistently.
Please write that down.
I,
I will repost it on my Instagram. Like my page is growing by the day and more people need to hear this. I'll happily repost it and tag you and every. Please write that down. Put your face on it. Put your name. Honestly, I've never like I mean this now I know what Oprah meant when she said like aha moment. Wow. That's that's I'm gonna pray on that tonight. I'm gonna pray on that before I go to sleep. And I had already done my prayers because like okay, because in my head I was like, okay, because I'm starting late at night, I'm gonna just go straight to sleep. So I did my prayers before I went to sleep. I'm gonna pray on that again before I don't care what time I sleep. Wow. That's you have no idea how many people that's gonna help. Low standard of confidence versus high standard of confidence. But if we get in alignment with God's purpose, we can wow. Okay. That's a word. That is a that is a word. Don't let Sarah Jakes hear that. She'll take it. And I love her, so I'm not like obviously
it's
pointing
good.
fingers. I'm just saying like, wow. That's such a profound thought.
Wow.
That confidence really does exist, but it's just on a spectrum of low versus high. As simple as that sounds, a lot of people don't realize that fact. I didn't even realize it until you said it. And the difference is God. Oh, yeah. That's a word.
Woo, man. What y'all, I don't know who you are that needed to hear this episode today, but you got the episode that you needed to get today.
We needed it. I needed it too.
Girl, Tatenda, y'all go support her. She has an amazing book that you guys need to get. What's the name of your book?
The name of the book is You Are Easy to Laugh At and Other Stories, which is a collection of short stories, poems, and think pieces of things that I've learned over the years, not just about abusive relationships, but also just about life and observations and just womanhood, whether it's Black womanhood or just growing up and coming of age. It's not as messy as it sounds. I've had very good reviews, and I think that anyone, man or woman, would really enjoy it because I've had a couple of men actually DM me and say your book was really interesting. I learned a lot. So yeah, that it's called You Were Easy to Laugh At and Other Stories, and you can find it in the link in my bio. I released it independently. So there is a website that you can get it on called gumroad.com, Gumroad. But if you're not able to access that website, DM me on my Instagram, tatenda.mandingwa. And you can DM me, and then we can come up with a plan.
So awesome. Y'all go support our sis. She has so much love, so much light to share, and she is ready to share it. Sis, Tatenda, thank you. Thank you for coming on this show with us. Thank you for sharing your light. Thank you for being vulnerable and being open to allow your experiences to serve others and to help others navigate the things that they're going through that they just might not understand. I believe that what you've experienced and what you've shared today is going to help them shape what's happening and open up their eyes to something that they didn't realize they had their eyes closed to.
Thank you so much, Emily, or should I say Miss Hayes? What do you prefer?
MB girl.
MB.
And the B
Thank you
stands
so
for
much.
boogie. Don't get me started. Don't get me
You
started.
remind me, you actually remind me so much of my mom. She's gonna love this episode. I think she's gonna love you as well. So, no, but thank you so much, Emily, for MB, for having me on your podcast and for reaching out. Thank you for the platform. Any person that can take their pain and transmute it into something greater to help other people is someone who's deeply anointed. And I hope that that anointing really, I have a very good feeling about 2025, but I have especially for characters like yourself, where you have such an open and good heart to help people and to raise awareness about something that is so talked about but yet barely understood unless you've gone through it. And thank you for your platform. Thank you for having me. I am convinced that your platform is going to grow like this year, believe me. So thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to talking to you again in the future. And if you ever want to come on my platform, let me know. I'm relaunching my podcast at like midway through this year, and I'd love to have you on so we could continue this conversation.
It's a
So
date.
thank you. Definitely.
It's a date. Say less. Say less. And on that note, I have nothing more to say because y'all done seen what it's all about. And you know what it is. We out here rising above insecurities, releasing the burdens of shame and guilt, and reviving our God-given power, passion, and purpose the confidence way. I ain't gonna keep you no more. Like I always say, she gone.